Welcome along, everyone. Hope you can hear me, and apologies for the slight late start. My name's Richard Jones, and I'll have met some of you before. I'm the chair of Shared Lives Plus. That's a huge privilege. I'm not a carer, I'm not a sharer, and once upon a time, though, I was a social worker, but I've been involved with Shared Lives now for a number of years. So welcome to our annual general meeting. Sorry for our slight late start. If this is a normal conference, my excuse would be I'd be trying to collect people from finishing off a cup of coffee in the corridors, but it's just been technically challenging to get everybody in the room ready to go. So we're here, and a warm welcome to our annual general meeting. What I want to do is take us through our agenda. So if we can go to the next slide, that I think has it. So people, hopefully you can see that. And what I'll do is just hold that slide for a minute and say that we met in a similar fashion a year ago, back in November 2021. The minutes of that meeting have been circulated. It was great because there were 142 colleagues and people who were on the conference, and I hope you're enjoying the conference. It was great this morning from the sessions that I was a part of. There are no matters arising from the minutes, so there's no actions we need to follow up. So I'm just going to ask if anybody wants to put anything into the chat, if they want to ask a question about the minutes last time. If not, we'll agree them and we'll move on to my report. So I'm going to give you a second or two, because we need to catch up some time. No, well, let's agree those minutes and move on. So if you can go to the next slide, please. As you can tell, I'm not controlling the slide, so every now and then you can hear me say next, but not now. So as your chair, I just wanted to reflect very quickly on the last year. And in reflecting, you're going to see lots of photos, and they might be people that you've seen before. They might be you. That would be wonderful if they were. But these are pictures of people who are in shared living, family by family, or home share arrangements. And our aims and values as an organisation haven't changed. What we're about is wanting a stronger, kinder society where people have the opportunity to share their lives and their homes, because we know that produces fantastic outcomes for people. It gives them a life that otherwise they couldn't have. And we do that primarily through home sharers and carers. You're the people who make this work. They're supported by social workers, supported by schemes, supported by commissioners, and hopefully supported by Shared Lives Plus. But it's you who make the difference. So looking back, it's been a tough year, and it will be a tough year because of both the cost of living crisis and us coming out of the pandemic. So I want to quickly just reflect on the year and start off with home share. If we go to the next slide, please. So we've seen growth in home share, and that is absolutely fantastic. It's grown by 5%. That might not sound a lot, but in the context of the broader social care world, any kind of growth is positive. And what I think is really exciting for home share in the period that we're entering is that we've got a significant amount of grant money to develop and support the wider development of home share across the UK. And Shared Lives Plus is taking a key role in that, in helping areas who've not had home share schemes until now create and develop home share schemes. So I'm really excited, and I think there's a massive opportunity for home share to continue to expand and develop. Can I have the next slide, please? The other thing I think is that Shared Lives is being recognised by governments across all four nations: Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. And I think we're seeing that awareness developing in each of those nations. We've also had direct support from we've had a number of secretaries of state this year, as government has been in a bit of turmoil, hasn't it? But one of them, Sajid Javid, was very, very supportive of Shared Lives Plus, and Molly and May, and their pictured on this slide, were featured in the government's white paper, which is their statement of what it is they're going to do about transforming social care. So Shared Lives Plus, Shared Lives, Home Share, absolutely the heart of what a different set of arrangements for social care would look like going forward. Next, please. I've already said it's been a challenging year, and I have the privilege now of chairing the Your Voice Forum for Carers, where we have 35 or so carers on a quarterly basis talking to us about the challenges they're facing. And what we know is that those challenges aren't going to go away. And what we've got to do on your behalf, because we're a membership organisation, is to ensure that we are talking to commissioners, we're talking to government, we're talking to anybody who can make a difference to the experience that Shared Lives carers are having around pay, around the cost of living, around energy, and around quality, and getting good respite arrangements, good rewards for what it is that you do. What you see there on that slide is the numbers, and the numbers have moved around. So if we look at the next slide, we'll just focus a little bit on England. Again, you can read the pictures. I always read the words. I always look at the pictures, because that's what speaks to me of what we are about. So we're supporting in England about 8,500 people. There's been a decrease in short breaks, a significant decrease, and a decrease in day supports as we have come through the pandemic and move forward. So we've got some real work to do. So next, we'll look at Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. So if we can have the next slide. Thank you. So there's again been a big decrease in day support in Scotland, although the numbers of permanent arrangements or longer term arrangements are going up. In Wales, we've seen an increase in the numbers of people supported. And in Northern Ireland, we're at the point of starting to do something very different in relation to the Shared Lives offer. And in each of those nations, we're being supported by development officers, by investment and grants from the devolved nations too. So next, please. And then a word about Family by Family, which is a project that we've been running with Stoke-on-Trent Council in the Midlands, that's coming to an end in terms of its current funding, but is going to continue in a different way, where with us working with Stoke to create a mentor arrangement. Family by Family has been a great opportunity to help families who are really challenged around supporting and looking after their children well, to be supported by other families who've had similar experiences. So instead of a social worker trying to help out, it's a different family that helps out. And it's been a great opportunity to, again, explore a different way in which people can share their lives and their experiences. So next, please. I want to just say a word of thanks to the membership team who've supported and got our numbers of members up to the highest number we've ever had. Almost all Shared Lives schemes across the 4 nations are members of Shared Lives Plus. And this year we've responded to almost 1,000 calls for help. That's 20 odd calls a week, helping people, carers, with advice and support in what has been a really difficult time. So huge thanks for that team and for the work they've done in terms of developing carer support groups, which have started to blossom around the country. Next, please. This is the boring bit in a sense, but it's an important thing to say. We're now in the process of putting into place our governance review, looking at a different blend of trustee experience to support us to deliver our plan. And we've, as part of that, established 3 Your Voice forums, one for carers, I mentioned that earlier, one for schemes, and one for home share. And we've been looking to see if we can find somebody who's prepared to chair those forums. At the moment, I chair the Carers Forum, and Martin, who's a board member, chairs the Scheme Forum. That hasn't worked, so the next forums we're going to have a conversation about what it is that we might do differently to get increased ownership and co-leadership from carers of those really important places where you can talk to people like me and Ewan, Lynette, and board members. Next, please. Just another word about home share. I think we've got our Home Share UK network. We've got 21 providers in that network. We're working with development officers now in both Wales and Scotland, and we've started a conversation with Clarion Housing around how they can support people who are in social housing arrangements to take on home share arrangements. So huge amount of work going on, and big thanks to Ramona, who's our board member, who ensures that home share gets the equal airtime that it needs in terms of Shared Lives Plus. Thank you. Let's have the next slide. And then co-production. Well, you've heard from some of our ambassadors this morning who are hugely inspirational. And they've been talking to politicians, they've been talking to ministers, they've been talking to civil servants. And it's people with lived experience who make the difference. Ewan can talk to people all day long, I could probably do. It's when people who've experienced home share or shared lives, that's when people listen up. And here's Stacey Dooley, who did a couple of programs on BBC Sounds, and there were 2 home share arrangements that got a lot of airtime on Radio 5 Live. So co-production has got to be at the heart of what we do. Next slide, please. And then just a word of thanks to my colleagues who are trustees. There's the names of us. We don't have a dog with spots on the board, but you can see the board there. We're a diverse board. We said goodbye to Vikram, it must be about a year ago now, and also Bart. So Bart was a Shared Lives carer from Bradford. He's now training to be a nurse and had to step down. But big thanks to Mike and to Maxine, who are Shared Lives carers, and to Ramona, who represents the Home Share UK network, and to all my colleagues on the board who've been working hard to continue to ensure that we support our members and we support Shared Lives Plus across all 4 nations. Next, please. So there we go. That's my report. I think, as I said at the start, this is a really tough time for sharers, for carers, for people who need to access the sort of support that we're able to provide. And it's going to continue to be a tough time. And we're going to do everything we can to ensure that sharers, carers get the best deal they can from local authorities, from the private providers who are involved in this sector. So I'll stop there. It might be that somebody has a question. I'll look for some help in terms of the chat box. So let's just see. I don't see anything. So Phoebe, you picked up a question about family by family, and we'll put something into the chat about that rather than getting ourselves stuck now. So I'm not missing anything, am I, colleagues, if I move on? No? Okay, I'm going to pass over to Ian, who is our treasurer, and he's going to provide us with an overview of our accounts and financial position. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Richard. As Richard may have said, the governance section was the was the boring part of the presentation. That's because he hadn't seen mine. Here we have the finances, and just a bit of background. As you're all aware, we're in very difficult financial times, and for both for individuals, and of course those reflect for Shared Lives Plus as well. It's not likely to get any easier for most people over the next year or so, and so we are completely aware that we need to keep a very close rein on the expenditure and the income of Shared Lives Plus. And I can assure you that the finance team are doing that. Lynette's got a great team, and they're working really hard to ensure the finances are in the state, the good state that they are. So I'll just briefly go through what the position is on the finances. The income grew again last year by 198,000, predominantly from grant funding, to just under £2 million a year. The unrestricted spend again is in surplus of just over 70,000, and we have a budget for the year which shows a small surplus. We're hopeful that we may in fact be able to improve on this as the year progresses, but obviously we face the same increased costs that you all face in both your job and in your domestic arrangements. Next slide, please. So the current situation of the balances, or rather the balances at the 31st of March 2022, which is our year end. We had restricted reserves of 168,000. That's a spare money that can't be used. It's for specific purposes, and so that's set aside for specific in respect to specific grants that we've received. But we had unrestricted reserves of 644,000, which is spare money that can be used by the charity if needed. Now, we're not looking to use that in a rush, but if we do hit difficult times over the next year or so, we do have some reserves to fall back on. Our free reserves actually total 420,000, because we have to keep a certain amount of the reserves aside for a situation if in the terrible situation if we had to wind the organisation up. We don't expect that to happen. We're in a very strong financial position. So it's a very healthy position, and the forecasted cash flow for the years shows us maintaining that healthy financial position. Next slide, please. So restricted income. We're grateful to grants from a number of organisations. I'll just quickly read them out. I know you can see them on the screen, but I do want to give thanks to the Welsh Government, the Pears Foundation, the National Lottery Community Fund, the Robertson Trust, the Department for Education, Fusion 21, Mercer's, Ecclesiastical, RS MacDonald, and Agnes Hunter for the support they have shown to the organisation during the past year. And that really is it for me. Next slide, please. Any questions? Here's your opportunity to ask about anything to do with the finances of the organisation. As long as they're not too difficult. Don't know anything about sorting out the government's finances. Far too complex for me and seemingly for the government. But okay, if there's no questions, somebody scanning to see if there's any questions. If not, thank you very much for listening, and I will pass on to Ewan, the new and excellent Chief Executive.
Thank you. You the comment about the government there is just making me giggle at the start of my presentation, which isn't ideal. Good to be back. Thank you for taking part in the event so far, and obviously for joining us at the AGM. And thanks to Richard and Ian for talking about where we've got to last year and also where we are with the finances. Just next slide, please. What I plan to cover in my presentation is, because I've only been here for 28 days, which is actually a horror film where zombies take over Great Britain, but I've not found any horror story at all since I've arrived. So what I intend to cover is what I've found out so far about where we are as an organisation, our strengths, our weaknesses, where we might need to develop further. I've been blessed with the opportunity to travel the length and breadth of the UK, talking to people involved in shared living, and I've picked up some themes and issues that are important to those different constituencies. I'll also take a bit of time to highlight some of the opportunities I think are ahead for us. Although it's bleak and difficult at times, there are still opportunities that we need to grasp. And then just talk you through some of the emerging priorities that I think might or might not feed into our business plan. These are emerging priorities, and I'm keen to hear feedback on these priorities over the coming months. So that's what I plan to cover. Next slide, please. Okay, so where are we now? I think as Ian's been highlighting, we're in good financial shape, given it's been a very challenging few years for the social care sector. So I'm obviously greatly indebted to the work of Lynette and others who have been keeping us in good financial shape. So that's a good starting point. However, some of our big funders and big funds do decrease over the coming years. So we will have to find new sources of revenue, new sources of income, and that's one of the priorities for next year. We have a strong team and a very strong culture, and that is apparent whenever I turn up to any meeting in Shared Lives Plus. People are kind, people are supportive. There really is a lovely culture here. I'm greatly enjoying working with my colleagues so far, and I think that's an incredibly positive sign. I think we've made a really strong case nationally, particularly in England, but also in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland for shared living. I think, as Richard said earlier, ministers are seeing its potential, civil servants are seeing its potential, but also local government leaders are seeing its potential. And I think there's a real opportunity over the next couple of years to harness that interest and build on the successes we've had already. So I think there's a really strong national and local interest. I think the big challenge now is how do you grow it on the ground? How do you recruit more carers? How do you build the case for investment in Shared Lives Plus? That's where I think greater support and emphasis is needed. And that leads me to think we need to do a bit more with our strategic advice function. We've got a great track record here, but I think there's scope for us to develop that offer further and make sure that we are providing really good support to local authorities and schemes to help them grow and diversify shared lives. So over the coming couple of months, we will be developing and refreshing that offer. Finally, I think we need to do a bit more to improve and enhance our membership offer. Real strengths here, as Richard said, we're making, taking 20 calls a week. We're supporting a lot of our members really well. We're growing our membership base, but we just need to constantly think about how we can improve that, particularly in light of the cost of living that's bearing down on carers at the moment and on schemes. Next slide, please. So what feedback have I picked up from the sector? I covered this a little bit in my introduction this morning, but I am hearing from almost everyone I've spoken to that recruitment of carers remains a massive challenge and is not going to get any easier. The carers that we have working in shared living are they're older, and there's a potential for more people to leave if we don't continue to recruit into shared living roles. There's a lack of support to carers, breaks or respite as it's sometimes called, which means that some carers are burning out, some carers are not getting the support they need, and that's something that we need to address. Cost of living is absolutely a critical issue and a challenge. There's also wider pressures, as Richard alluded to in his presentation, to pressure on social care. And this makes it really difficult for local authorities to invest in different ways of providing social care, including shared lives and home share. So, as I've said before, there's a real first for us to provide much more practical and hands-on support to help local authorities and schemes grow shared lives. And it actually raises an issue of whether we need to do more to promote shared lives nationally. Is there some kind of marketing or advertising campaign that we can get involved in that will grow awareness and understanding of shared lives and home share across the UK? Next slide, please. lots of opportunities. There are always opportunities. And I think, as Richard said, there's government's interest and support for shared lives. Although we have a bit of stasis in government at the moment, there are some difficulties, I think, in terms of decisions being made in government. Phoebe and I met with the Department of Health and Social Care officials just last week, and they were still talking about making an investment in new models of care, or particularly shared lives. So we're still optimistic that something will happen on that front before Christmas. There's also interest in the other UK nations in investing in shared lives. We're just going to keep pushing and seeing what comes out of that. So we've also got the opportunities, I think, to diversify the model. It's not listed there, but it should be actually. Mental health, I think, is an interesting area to explore. We're certainly being contacted more and more by the NHS to explore how we can diversify shared lives into mental health. But I think there's also opportunities around domestic abuse, supporting people out of hospital into their homes, and also supporting young people and care leavers. And as I've said, I think there's real appetite within local government to grow shared lives, and we just, I think, have to help provide the tools and resources that can help them achieve that growth. So there are opportunities. I remain optimistic about the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So emerging priorities, I think, first of all, we absolutely remain committed and should remain committed to growing shared lives and home share, and maximising and galvanising the opportunities that arise in central government, but also locally. I think there's more that we could explore doing on supporting the sector to recruit into home share and shared lives, providing better support for members. I was just on a call in a workshop just a while back, about an hour ago, and carers were on that call were saying we need to be connected much more to other carers, and schemes were saying that, scheme workers were saying they often feel isolated, and how could we become more connected and supported by others working in this sector. So I think there's more we can do to support that. I think there's also more we can do to continue to build a strong and sustainable organisation. EDI stands for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. I think there's more that we can do to become a more diverse organisation. Diversification of funding. I think there are opportunities in the UK nations to grow and diversify our sources of income. And I think our financial fundamentals are in good shape, but we can always enhance that further. And finally, and Richard mentioned this, co-production. I think there's more we can do to embed that culture within the organisation so that we're involving people all the time in our decision making about how we organise ourselves. So that's just a few slides from me. And as I said, this is a point in time. These priorities will evolve over the next few months as we build up our business plan for the next 3 years. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Can I take back the sound? Oh, you can hear me. Sorry. So it's back to Richard. Many thanks, Ewan, and a big welcome to you to Shared Lives Plus. It's fantastic to have you on the team, and huge thanks go to Jane, who in the interim after Alex departed held the organisation, kept us strong and steady and moved us forward. So as Ewan said, you've had to hit the ground running a little bit, but you've hit the ground running because the organisation is moving at pace. So big thanks to Jane and to the team who supported the transition from Alex, who we wish all the best this time last year, to Ewan's arrival. So it's great to have you with us, Ewan, and we really look forward to working with you. So there's nothing else to say. I think we just missed one thing on the agenda, which was to confirm the appointment of the auditors. It's on the agenda. You'll see that. So that's that. My job now is to ask if there's any other business. So I'm hoping somebody's going to give me a shout if there is. Anybody wants to raise anything else? I don't think there is. So let's hold it there. We're halfway through a really exciting conference in tough times, so we have to acknowledge that. But I hope that people have got some inspiration. I got some real inspiration just hearing from some of our Shared Lives carers this morning, home sharers and ambassadors. So I hope people have got some inspiration, some ideas. It's great to hear that people are wanting to find ways of connecting, whether they be scheme workers or carers, sharers. And let's look forward to tomorrow, because there's another full day of events and celebrations. So many thanks for your time. We'll formally call the meeting to a hold. Thanks for your attendance, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.